today on the Asset Mindset podcast, we have a very special guest, a strong woman, an inspiring woman who is changing the world with her curiosity. Today's special guest is Lai-DuMone. And what a pleasure it is to have you here. And you have so many things you've done. I mean, TED Talks, CEO. I love that you're an author. And What If Pigs Could Fly? A practical guide to follow your curiosities to achieve impractical possibilities. So I love that because I'm all about mindset, growth, and changing. So please tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do and what you're planning on doing in the future too.
Sure. So you said a lot of it. I started this business about 10, maybe 11 years ago, almost 11 years ago. And what I do is my curiosity at the time was, how do I bring more creativity into the workplace? And initially it was honestly bringing arts and crafts. I was like, can I come to your office on a Friday afternoon and bring an arts and crafts project, something maybe we can call Weave of Dreams, where we talk about people's dreams and you do a yarn weave for a wall hanging. Everyone said no. Everyone said no to that. So I revamped it and I looked at my past experiences in learning development, talent development, and thought, how could I combine my love for creativity and my knowledge that creativity can bring so much into adult learning and my past experiences. And that's when I came up with Work Smart Advantage. And I started tying these creative methodologies to leadership development, team development. And instead of calling my art projects, I started calling them creative artifacts. So now we still do the same thing. You're still painting a rock, but now it's called a creative artifact. So that's like the short version of like how I got to the business. But then of course there's all the stuff that led me there too.
That's fantastic. And I love how just adapting and changing the presentation, how you present yourself and what you do can get you a totally different outcome. So just because you have an idea that it isn't working, well, maybe just you got to put a little twist on it or spin. And that's amazing. So you have an incredible life story, obviously, and your whole family and your mom and everything she's been through and done. I don't know where to ask about, so I'm just going to ask in general. What is the hardest moment in your life where you really realized that you needed to shift your mind and be more positive and take control of your life?
So to go way back, I am a Vietnamese refugee. We came here. Yesterday was the 50th anniversary of the fall of Saigon and marks the 50th anniversary of when my family came to this country. And, there was a lot of hard moments being a American kid raised by Vietnamese refugee parents. There was certainly this idea of like how I should be in the house and how my parents expected me to be. And then this whole outside world that expected something completely different of me. So I think growing up, there was like a lot of lack of confidence, a lot of understanding who I was and just looking to other places to figure out how I should act. And what that led me to was doing all the right things, right? I went to school, I got straight A's, I went to college, not knowing why I was going to college, right? I studied biology, then I studied psychology. And I ended up graduating with a psychology degree, not thinking that I was going to be a psychologist or go into that field at all. It was just like, it was easier than biology, right? And then I got my MBA because that seemed like the next right step to do. So I found and then got the corporate jobs and sort of went down that path. And I think the question was, what was the hardest moment when I really felt like I needed to make a change was when my son was born. He was 8 weeks old at the time. So I had this tiny little baby. And I was sitting on the couch in my living room and I got a phone call from my sister to get down to the UCLA emergency room right away. My brother, who was a police officer at the time, was in a head-on collision on his motorcycle with a tree. So we got there and that led to 2 months of him being in induced coma in the ICU. And every day we were there, the whole family, his police department, they had someone there 24 hours and we were, to be with him. And then we came every day. And I think about it now, I'm like, but maybe it was not the best decision to take an 8-week-old baby to the ICU every day. But we didn't know what else to do. So we just sat there every day, walking around the halls of the hospital, waiting for him to wake up. And it was during that time, I think all that time of silence and unknowing, not knowing what was next, that gave me a lot of time to think about, what am I doing with my life? right? I was in a job that was a really good job, but it wasn't for me. I had been unhappy for years. I had had this idea for this business in my head for 6 years, but too scared to move forward with it. And it was in that, in that moment of seeing my brother in that condition and then holding this little 8-week-old baby. And I thought to myself, I want this boy to see me grow up, see his mom do something she loves, and clearly look at my brother. I'm like, life is short. Um, Side note, he's perfectly fine now. I can't, my brother's a miracle. He woke up 2.5 months later. First thing he says, I want to get back to work. And he worked for a whole year, resilience, grit, like hard work, took the whole physical test, becoming a police officer again, and he went back to work. He's now retired and like fishing right now, I think, but
Good for him.
yeah, he does it, well deserved.
No, that's a great story. And it's incredible how those moments, those life-changing moments where you're faced with your mortality or a loved one's mortality, that can really shift your mind and be like, wow, I really do have a limited amount of time on this earth. We
Yeah,
tend to forget that. We put things, I'll do it later, I'll do it tomorrow.
absolutely.
And we got to get beyond that because we need to live in the now and the present. That's why I love Eckhart Tolle and The Power of Now. That's a
Mm.
great book. I don't know if you've read it or any of you
Heard
listeners
of it, have
out
not
there,
read it.
please. It's it's very empowering because you realize everything is happening right now. So you can control right now. You don't have to worry about the past or the future and live in the present moment and finding peace. But I want to touch back to your story. You said
Mhm.
something about being scared and having fear of that dream. Let's try and help the listeners overcome fear. Like you obviously were able to in that moment, that was a life-changing moment for you and your family, but you were able to overcome fear. So let's talk about overcoming fear and going after a dream, a business, a goal, or whatever it may be.
Sure. So I think as human beings, like you said, we get so comfortable in where we are, in where we are, and then we get scared of anything else, right? Like if I make any changes, like what would happen? And I think honestly, I'm gonna just talk for me personally as a Vietnamese refugee and seeing the way I was and knowing the way I was brought up and seeing my dad always scared about making any changes, right? Because when I think about it now in hindsight, like he had his whole world pulled from him and dropped out from under him. So of course he wanted the most stable conditions as possible. And so that's how I grew up and that's what I saw. That was what I was modeled. So for me, this idea of risk taking was innately who I am, but also, I was brought up not to take risks. So there was a lot of fear in that for me because I thought if I make any changes, like when's the other shoe going to drop? So I think and of course like it took that incident of my brother, being in that condition combined with having a little baby that really for me those two things in combination made me drop that fear and be like I'm just going to go for this. But hopefully that doesn't have to happen to everybody, right? Hopefully there's a way and there must be a way that people can get past that fear without something like that happening to them. And this came a little bit later when I wrote the book, What a Pigs Can Fly, A Practical Guide to Follow Your Curiosities. In it, I talk about a framework to follow your curiosities. And I think what most people do is they think too, like you said, they think too far in advance. So I had this business in my head for 6 years and I never took one step because I kept looking at that. Like, what is this business going to look like 10 years from now? How is it going to be successful? Where really all I had to do was take that first small step and see what opens up for me. So I think in terms of fear, if people are facing that fear, don't think too far ahead. Just think about what's the first small step I need to take towards this new possibility or this curiosity.
Yeah, you're right on. Taking that first step, that gets you moving, and movement
Yes.
is good. And when you're moving, then you can start to build momentum. And believe it or not, once you start, it gets easier. Doesn't mean it's going to be easy the whole time, right? Being an entrepreneur is tough
Oh
at
yeah.
times.
Yes. Being entrepreneur is not like an uphill climb, right? It's definitely ups and downs all the time, no matter how
Yeah,
successful you are.
exactly. It's a roller coaster. You get curveballs, but that's life. The struggle is real for everybody. And I think listeners, that's what you need to realize. You're not alone. Everybody has these struggles. It's part of the human condition. You got this. And fear, I love this. I forget where I heard it, but it's false evidence appearing real. You're
Mm,
projecting, like you said, it is something that you were thinking way ahead into the future. And in reality, that wasn't where you were at. You were here and
Yeah.
now, and you can make those changes and start taking the steps to then get to wherever in the future. So I think that's fantastic. So part of fear is it's an obstacle to overcome. Let's talk about obstacles and how to overcome obstacles. I love how you have your curiosity and creativity or the artwork or the arts and crafts. Um, Please share with overcoming problems and using creativity to actually solve a problem or overcome a challenge in one's life.
Sure. So if we really think about how we overcome challenges, it's through creativity, right? It's through doing something different. And I don't mean like, oh, you're going to overcome a challenge by weaving dreams or painting a rock. Like that's not the creativity I'm talking about. When I teach creativity in the workplace and when I teach it for creative problem solving, it's a thinking tool. Like how can we think differently? As adults, we tend to think in analytical left brain thinking, and our perspective is like this, right? It's tunnel vision. Here's how we've fixed things in the past. Here's how we've done things in the past. So let's just keep it doing it that way. And these creative problem solving ideas and tools helps with is like, let's just expand our thinking. Like, what else is possible? Asking questions like, what if? How might we? So when I talk about creativity in the workplace or creativity in life to solve problems, it's really about expanding thinking.
I love that because we need to expand our minds. If you want to
Yeah.
grow, that's what you have to do. You have to step out from your comfort zone and get out behind the shadows and get out front in the spotlight sometimes. And it's tough
That's
for
right. That's
people
right.
because we're worried about criticism.
Yeah.
And let's talk about that right now. People that challenge you or, you get criticized. How do you overcome that in the world?
Well, can I go back to the creative thinking for a second?
Sure, absolutely.
Just because I think I don't want to leave it out there because I feel like a lot of times we hear it all the time, like let's think more creatively, let's be more innovative. But then people are left with like, if I could, I would, right? It's like I don't know how. So I think that's where the work I bring into organizations, it fills in that gap between like, let's be more creative, everyone, because we need creativity, and then just leaving them alone, right? So for example, if people are listening and they have a challenge, they're overcoming a problem, vetting an opportunity, there's certain creative thinking tools that you can use. Like one I love, and I think I may have shared this on another podcast, is the worst idea ever. So think about like let's say you're overcoming a challenge, and to get over that fear, think like, what's the worst idea ever I could think of to solve this challenge, or what's the worst idea ever what's the worst thing that could happen, and then switch that question and think about like, oh, what's the best thing that could happen, or what's the opposite of this worst idea that might actually help me take that first small step. So that's just one of many creative problem solving tools that I use to get people to like we said, expand that thinking, but literally not just asking them to expand their thinking, but give them tangible, practical, usable tools that are going to allow them to do so.
Yes, asking the right questions is so important. That's why I love your what if. That what if is great because people do focus on the things that could go bad. It's a survival technique with our minds, and we need to look out for the bad thing that could hurt us.
Right.
But what if the good thing happened?
Right.
And
Exactly.
I also talk about the how do I mentality instead of like, oh, I can't.
Yes.
When you're talking about creativity, that's why I love the what if. It's very similar to how do I? And to get to the how do I, you need creativity.
Yes, absolutely. And when whether it's for yourself or in a team, that's one tool I always teach people. Like if you walk away with nothing else, when you're trying to solve a challenge or overcome, a problem, don't just state the problem. Be like, okay, so how, like, what are we going to do about this? State it as a how might we question, right? How might we solve for this? That opens up you start by opening it for possibilities versus sitting in that challenge.
Yes. And don't be afraid to take action and move and be creative because I
Right.
think a lot of people, they're afraid to put themselves out there. They have self-doubt or they oppress themselves with their own thinking. And what are some tools that you use to help people open up and actually share and be able to ask these questions?
So Okay, so I mean, I guess like a good answer to that one are some of the I'm going to talk about the mindset tool first, and then I'll talk about some of the creative tools. So when I am in that position where I'm like, should I do this? Should I not do this? And I get in my head too much um about what people are going to think. There's two tools. Number one, I think about like, okay, think about what I'm thinking about doing, and this whole idea of like, I mean, it might seem a little like woo woo, but it's like where, like, how does that feel in my body, right? Does it feel heavy or does it feel light? Is it a hell yes in my body or a hell no in my body, right? So if it's a yes, then go for it and leave out all that other stuff that's in your head about like what are people going to think, are people going to judge me, how does it feel to you in your body? That's always the right choice as far as I'm concerned. Another tool I use that's maybe a little more linear is this idea of reframing, right? It could be a challenge, it could be a mindset, but really like literally write it down. Let's say you're thinking like I have this in my this I have this actually a exercise on this in my book, this reframe exercise. What is it you're trying to accomplish? I wrote for mine like I want to write a book, or I want to write a book. That's what I want to do. My And that book took 4 years to write because my mindset at first was like, I don't know how to write a book. Who am I to write a book? Right. So that's in column one. Column two is a reframe of that of, okay, I don't know how to write a book yet, and I can figure out how. And then the third column is your evidence. Like, okay, what have I figured out how to do in the past? And you can write, like I learned to surf, I learned to do stained glass, make a stained glass window. I started a business. I didn't know any of those things, but I did it. So then it gives you the encouragement and the confidence to go and write that book.
That's fantastic. That is a great practical exercise. People, you need to be doing exercises like that. Find a technique, question, something that you can journal or whatever it may be. Pros and cons list, even something that simple.
Yeah.
And it's incredible how powerful doing things like that can be.
It
So
truly is because we can get so in our heads. Like I'm an overthinker, and I like to call it like trying to recover from being a people pleaser from growing up and in my childhood. So sometimes I'll send an email out and I won't get a response, especially for like a client. I'm like, oh my gosh, they hate me, right? Like, and you read this and like, okay, what's really happening here?
yeah, yeah.
Like, okay, you sent an email 3 minutes ago and they haven't responded yet. Like, most likely they don't hate you. Most likely they're busy.
Yeah.
But we can go down these rabbit holes of overthinking.
No, absolutely. And that's something we need to learn. And it's a skill anybody can learn. It comes easier for
Yeah.
some people, but it's definitely possible for anybody to learn these skills. And that's what's so great. You just have to have the determination or the motivation and the why to go
Hmm.
after it. So let's talk about whys. You had, a newborn baby, 8 weeks old, and that I'm guessing was a big, powerful why for you.
Yeah.
So what if someone doesn't have that new baby or they don't necessarily know what their why is? How would you help them find their why?
I think a why it can be a really hard question, right? Especially when we're inundated with so many, I would say, obstacles and also responsibilities. So same thing, same idea as we talked about before is like, so people say like follow your passion to find that why. I kind of revamped that to be like follow what you're curious about, right? Like just follow your curiosities, and that might lead you to your why. I would say that my why came about, the why of starting the business and actually taking that leap was because of that, of having my son, seeing my brother in that position. But really, it was after starting the business I realized, like, oh, that was my why to start the business. But my why for the business came about from doing the business. So initially, it was I want to bring creativity into the workplace, arts and crafts. Everyone's creative. I want everyone to get their hands on things because I found how important creativity was in my life. And what I realized as I was running the business is it's not so much about the hands-on creative art projects and the work we do in terms of like, yes, it brings people joy because we are all innately creative. So when you allow people to tap into their creativity, something lights up in them. Yes, all that. But what I found in doing this work in the workplace is that when you give teams and people the space to be creative, what you're doing is allowing people to share their voice, right? Giving people different ways, different modalities. So all voices making the table. Everyone feels that they can share. There's psychological safety being built. There's trust being built. So I would say that if you follow your curiosity and take those small steps, your why will show up along the way.
I love that. I really do. I think that's fantastic. And that goes with getting out of your comfort zone. Like you had to make a
Yeah.
change. You didn't fully know your why at that point, but getting out of your comfort zone and you were growing, that then exposed your why and you got to learn. So
Yes.
definitely getting out of your comfort zone is so important. Is there anywhere else in your career or life that you've seen where stepping out of your comfort zone has actually made some big changes and growth for you?
Let me think. So, so I'm just gonna the one thing that comes to my mind was, and I hear I'm gonna share this 'cause I hear this a lot from people, is especially I don't know if we I work with transitioning veterans. I don't know if you know that part of my story with the Honor Foundation.
Yes.
Um, so you know this so transitioning veterans and just other people who come into who book calls me. Their one thing is like I don't know how to make myself visible. Like I'm not comfortable making myself visible. Like doing things on LinkedIn, posting on Instagram, whatever it is, making videos. And the reality is like that's the way the world works right now. Like if you want to be visible, if you want to elevate yourself, you have to get out of that comfort zone of like just not being seen. And so I would say that is the one thing I would talk about. So when I first started my business, I used to make a joke about this, but it really wasn't a joke. I'm like, okay, why isn't my business growing? I'm like, and the joke was like, oh, maybe it's because only me and my mom know about it, right? And she still thinks I'm a doctor,
That's funny.
which I never was, but she just likes to
Yeah.
say I
Yeah.
am. So so yeah, so I about now it's probably about 7 years ago. I sat down with a friend of mine who was at that time, she called herself a collaboration coach. And she's like, well, what are you trying to accomplish this year? It's like, well, I'd love to grow my business, and be on more podcasts to grow my business. And and she's like, okay, so here's what you're gonna do. You're gonna go home right now and you're gonna put a post on LinkedIn that says, I'm looking to expand the growth of my business. Who has a podcast they want, that would want to talk about curiosity, creativity, whatever it is. And I was nodding at her because I'm a people pleaser, right? Like, yeah, yep, sure, I'm going to do that. And in my head, it's like, there is no way in the world I'm ever going to do that, right? This idea of like asking for help and then putting it out there in public, not going to happen. The other thing she told me to do is start making these small 30-second videos on LinkedIn. And also I nodded my head, but inside I was going, not a chance. But since she was a really good friend and coach, she's like, have you done it? Have you done it? Have you done it? So eventually I had to do it. And just for the people out there who are struggling in that position right now, I got probably 5 or 6 podcast episodes, bookings from that post. And that 30-second video, the first 30-second video I made took about 7.5 hours, right? To make. But now you follow me on LinkedIn, or we connect on LinkedIn, you see I'm on there every day, maybe twice a day, because I understand now, because I've experienced it, the power of visibility. And the other thing to get over that too, I believe, is this idea, like you don't put yourself out there for yourself, right? You put it out there if you have a strong message to share with people and you can bring value to people's lives.
I love that. And that's what brought me. I mean, you work with veterans, so you kind of know guys with me and my background. We
Yeah,
don't necessarily like to be in the spotlight sometimes.
absolutely.
My
Yep.
community, quiet professional. And I used to interpret that as silent professional. So I need
Mm,
to quiet was silent. And I was actually on a podcast myself and I heard, no, quiet professional isn't a silent professional. And I'm like, oh, that clicked for me. And that's why I started
yeah.
putting myself out there a little more. And I still need to do it more. I need to grow. And I think we all do a little bit. But you are absolutely spot on. And I love the things you're saying and sharing. I think a lot of our listeners are going to be able to relate and understand. And you touched on something earlier that I want to go back to, which you said your body feels a certain way. Let's talk about
Hmm.
gut feelings, or some people call like spiritual guidance. Like
Yeah.
inside, you have this calling or drive. How do you recognize that? And then can you use that to apply it in your life?
So in my book, I talk about like this idea of like the framework. I'm going to tell you my whole book right now. It's 3 things, right? It's like it's pause and
No,
pay
there's
attention.
more to it.
is pause and pay attention to the curiosities that come to you. Ask what if, and then take small steps. So that first part is so important. The first part is that pause, and what you just talked about is like, where do I, here's an idea, here's a situation. Can we take a second and just pause and not react or respond? And where, like, how does that feel? And it's such a hard question when you first start asking yourself, where do I feel that in my body? Because that's not how we're, brought up or trained or groomed, I guess you say. We're groomed to like, what do you think about that? Right? What do you think? And there was a podcast. I'm sorry I forget who this was, but they talked about anxiety as you can't think yourself out of anxiety, right? Because anxiety starts in the body. So you have to take some action to get out of that anxiety. Go for a run, take a walk, whatever it is. So that's how I think about, when something comes up, an idea, a curiosity, a situation, if we can pause and be like, okay, and get back to like, okay, where do I feel this? And how does it feel? How does it feel in my body? Not what I'm thinking about, but how do I feel? How does it feel in my body? What's tightening? What's loosening? Whatever it might be. If we can start recognizing it, that's what I think of a gut reaction. So I don't even think it's mystical. Really, it's actually a physiological change in your body it's science. So we're just not trained to pause, and we're not trained to acknowledge that. We're trained to think ourselves out of things. So it's a practice, and I'm not great at it because I'm an overreactor for sure.
Don't beat yourself up. You're doing amazing things. So I want to share something with you because you talked about pause. I use sometimes when I'm helping people or coaching, stop. Just stop.
Oh, that's a good one.
Stop, think, observe, and then plan or proceed. Either way, you can use those P's. So that's a good acronym to use to help trigger and people to remember, okay, I don't want to just react.
Yeah.
Stop. So, because you'll feel that in your body. Like you said, if you're getting anxious and you're getting anxiety, you need to recognize that, have that self-awareness, and then bam. All right, pause or stop. So that's great advice. I think the listeners are going to get a lot from that. But
And it's a practice, right? It's a practice. You
Oh,
have to,
yes.
it's not like you're going to just get it. Yeah.
Yeah. So I was asking earlier about getting out of your comfort zone, and I was thinking the way you were going with social media and exposure, whatnot.
Uh-huh.
Let's hear about this TED Talk that you were
Oh,
on.
okay.
That's like out there and fantastic and eye-opening, educational.
Yeah.
So that must have been a big step and leap for you.
Okay, so let me just like I am out there doing good things in the world, but let me tell you, like a lot of these things started off because I was being selfish, right? like the TEDx talk, I was like, okay, I want to grow my business. How do I get more visibility? And again, TEDx was in my head for a few years as a business owner. I was like, I want to do a TEDx talk. And I was going to do it on creativity, but there's so many amazing people who've already done a talk on creativity. I was like, who am I to? Right. So I had that limiting belief of who am I to? So I was at this event in Anaheim with my mom. So my mom, our story is we came in from Vietnam. Our first home was Camp Pendleton Marine Base in San Diego. And then we were transferred to a refugee center up in Northern California that was run by civilians. And one of the volunteers was Hollywood movie star Tippi Hedren, most famously known for her role in The Bird, Alfred Hitchcock movie The Birds. So her role was to help these women find a career in this new country. And she started typing and sewing class. And 20 women signed up, including my mom. And as they were typing and sewing, she'd walk around the room encouraging them. And they noticed her long red manicured nails. So long story short, that led down to this path of following curiosity for them to become the first 20 licensed Vietnamese manicurists in the United States. And now $8.3 billion industry. So I was in Anaheim at a celebration for my mom and Tippi. And as my mom was on stage, I'm like, this is my TEDx talk, right? This is my TEDx talk. It's about curiosity, creativity. And when you follow your curiosity with creativity, what can you accomplish? What possibilities can you create for yourself and others? So because I was clear now on what my talk was, things just started happening. So I was on my computer one night on LinkedIn, scrolling LinkedIn, and I saw a advertisement from this woman I had met at a conference once 4 years ago. Said she's producing a TEDx talk. It's called TEDx Women, Mission of Mavericks, in Anaheim, and they had all their speakers lined up and they were selling tickets. So I bought a ticket to attend, thinking like, well, that would have been a great spot for me to tell this story. And I walked away, and there it was, that little idea tapping me on the shoulders, like, well, Vaughn, what if you could speak on that stage? So I went back to my computer, typed up a little email telling her what I want to talk about. And a little while later, she reached back out and said, we'd love for you to tell that story on our stage. So,
Oh, fantastic.
yeah,
That's great. And taking the initiative, to reach out. You
yeah,
could have just limited yourself and been like, oh, they already have the speakers.
that's exactly
And
right.
taking that initiative, that's inspiring. And I want people to understand that, taking a little initiative, sending an email, making a phone call, saying hi, building a relationship with somebody can be completely life-changing for you and your
Yes.
family. And can you talk about that in a sense as far as networking, getting to know people, surrounding yourself with good people? How has that changed you, how you interact with others?
So I've always been no, I shouldn't say it. So when I was a little kid, I was so shy. I didn't talk to anyone, right? I like hide behind my mom's legs, going out. I don't know when I became more extroverted, but I am actually more, I would say I'm more introverted than extroverted. Um, but I think for me, really starting to reach out to people, particularly for business on LinkedIn, and meeting people. Well, I think it connects to knowing what your why is, knowing what your passion is. Like as I started to develop a clear path to what I wanted to do with my business, or not even a clear path of what I wanted to do, but like um but the why behind it, bring creativity into the workplace, changing learning development, doing things differently, and putting my voice out there. It almost was, I didn't have to try to attract those people into my life. I didn't have to try to find those people in my life. I just attracted them, right? This idea of like being the lighthouse, being who you are authentically, and having a message to share that's going to impact other people. I found that people were drawn to that, and I would just meet people on LinkedIn, at networking events, who really took to what I was saying, and I took to what they were saying too. I don't know if that really answers the question, but I find myself surrounded by people who understand the work I do and who do similar work, but maybe a little bit differently. So there's a lot of collaboration there.
Yeah, no, I love it. And that's one of the concepts I talk about in the asset mindset is you got to get out there and surround yourself with positive people in positive environments. It's not
Yeah.
just the people, you need to be in these good environments too. So
Yes.
that's absolutely spot on.
Yeah.
And I think that's fantastic that you have the ability to do that and the motivation, because motivation is so important. And
Yes.
with motivation, I want to get into and transition to mentorship. Have you had anybody really help mentor you? And what is the power of a mentor? Or are you mentoring anybody?
So I'm gonna start by saying that I didn't know what a mentor was, right? It's like
Hmm.
there's something about, and my friend Hang Black, who's also a Vietnamese refugee, wrote a book about this, right? About immigrant women in the workplace. And be, and we did things very differently than well, let me put it this way. We did things the way we knew how to do things, which was, I'm just gonna work hard, and if that doesn't work, I'm going to hunker down and work harder. And if that doesn't work, I'm going to hunker down more and work harder, right? There's no looking for help. There's no asking for advice. This is just the way I did it because it's
Hmm.
all I knew how to do. And she wrote this book to share with, like, oh, wait, there's other ways. I could have had a mentor this whole time. I could have asked for help. Who knew? Like, no one told me that. No one told me that. I didn't know. I didn't think it was okay to ask for help. So I wouldn't say I've in my career that I've had any official mentors, but I will have to say that there have been people in my life who I look to and be like, okay, look at what they're doing, and emulating it, and I would say just like how um not involuntary. What's the word? Not official mentors, just people who
Okay.
come in, give me some advice, and some people stick around and some people don't. And as far as me being a mentor, I am not part of any type of mentorship program, but there's a lot of people I meet out there who ask me about the work I do, and I'm happy to have cups of coffee, conversation with anybody who's interested in learning from me of whatever I might know.
That's fantastic. And that's one of the things I want people to understand is it doesn't have to be an official mentor title. Like you sitting down with coffee, having coffee with someone that's curious about what you do or wants to learn about curiosity, like
Yeah,
right there, you're mentoring. So mentorship comes all different forms, all different places. And most people are glad to share their knowledge and their mentorship. At least I've found that. Have you found that as well?
absolutely, absolutely. And it goes back to what we said just before about the network. It's similar to the networking that you were talking about, building that network. Is you just have to ask, and that's a muscle to be built too, right? I used to feel so scared to ask people for anything, but as you start reaching out and asking, what you'll find is, yeah, some people may never get back to you, and the right ones will. That's like the a mindset shift I've had to make is anything that's meant for me will come to me. Right. So if I reach out to someone who I really want to talk to and they never reach back out to me, like, okay, well, there's a reason for that. Things are happening for me, not to me.
I love that. And I think everybody, all our listeners need to realize that as well. You can't beat yourself up. And if it's meant to be, it'll be. Just keep doing you, chasing your dreams, following what you want. And that's a prime example of that because you don't want to obsess over things. You
Yeah.
don't want to be in that victim mentality like, oh, I did something wrong. That's why they're not answering me. Or, I'm not worthy, or these negative, oppressive thoughts in your head. And I think most people, when they're first starting, that's when it's the most powerful. So I know you talked about writing things down and reframing. Is there
hmm
anything else as far as maybe reframing tricks, like just in your head rather than writing it down? What can someone do to fight that in the middle of the day? All of a sudden they have this victim mentality or this thought come in their head.
Yeah. So I think if people have some sort of mantra they can talk about, but
Mm.
I've been listening to this podcast. His name is David Guyam, and he talks a lot about certainty. Right. So, and I find that like for me, like that's something that I have been using a lot if I'm walking my dogs and I don't have a piece of paper and pen, if I get into that thought of like, oh, why hasn't this happened? Or, like whatever like that negative thought is, I'm like, okay, I'm just going to pause and be like, I am certain that things are going to work out. Like, I'm just certain that this is like, whatever it might be, I'm certain that my business is going to grow. And there's just this power in certainty. So that's like a very simple one for me is like I'm walking around, I can feel myself starting to be overwhelmed or just starting my mind starting to go like, okay, I'm just certain this is going to work out.
I love that. You got
Yeah.
such great techniques. You can tell you've been on this growth
Oh yeah.
mindset for a while, and you're sharing real knowledge. So
Can I share one more as a bit of a
absolutely,
story
please
too?
do. That's why you're here.
So I think being a female entrepreneur, and having to talk to a lot of CEOs, COOs in this business, I used to be so intimidated, right? So intimidated, and my energy was off because of that
Mm.
intimidation. And one day I went to visit my friend Dan and his wife in Kentucky, and he had opened up the biggest distillery in Kentucky. And we went and he took me around. I could see people like going like Cal, I could see that they felt about him the way I felt about CEOs, CFOs.
Mm.
Um, and I thought to myself, it's just Dan, right? In college, Dan used to like go fishing and make me Cheeto crusted fried fish. Right? So like that's how I look at people I work with now. We're all human beings like that CEO is just someone's Dan who probably he probably cooked someone some Cheeto crusted fried fish at some point. Just treat them like that.
No, I love it, and that's a great point. Someone that you're nervous or scared to be around, or you think that's in this higher up level position. You know what? They're a person too.
That's
They're
right.
somebody's brother, sister, mother, dad, whatever it may be. They're just a person. We're all human beings. We're all on this journey of life. So that's
Yeah.
That's fantastic. I love that. That was a super powerful one, and thank you for sharing.
You're welcome.
You know,
And
because I
maybe
think the
you might want
listeners.
to try that recipe for your family.
I'm a carnivore. I only eat meat. I'm that crazy
Oh,
guy. I'm reverse vegan.
interesting.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. I got a farm with cows and chickens. I eat my own eggs. We raise our own beef.
What?
It's
Okay, so
yeah.
we need to talk more about that because if you ask me what's next for me is I want a farm.
Do you? Great.
Yeah.
Awesome. Any particular things on the farm that you'd like to have?
Yeah, I mean, it sounds ridiculous, but in fact, I think like the most ridiculous things can be a reality. So I don't plan on like eating any of my animals, but I want a mini animal farm. Like I want some mini cows, some mini goats, some mini donkeys, and a art studio for arts like for arts and crafts, particularly making stained glass.
Fantastic. No, that's great. I love the dream, and I love that you're putting it out there. We want to dream in high definition.
Yeah,
You know, you
I
don't
do eat
want to
meat
just.
though. Not to say I'm not getting my own animals, but I do eat meat.
Well, it's funny you say that because I have three kids, and my daughters are younger, and we have our pet chickens and layer chickens, but then we'll raise our meat birds, and that's what we call them. They're meat birds, so they differentiate and they understand. And then our cows, they're having a hard time with, especially we had four babies born. I don't have
Oh,
a large herd, but we had
yeah,
four calves this year, and they're like, "Can we keep them all?" And I'm like,
yeah. Oh, that's
"Yeah,
how
we're
old are
gonna
your
keep
girls?
most of them."
Yes. How old are your kids?
Six, and the next one is turning 9 on May 4th. She's 3 days away from being 9. I can't get over.
Well,
She's
that
halfway
is
to
my
18.
birthday too.
No way.
Yes,
May
fellow
4th.
Taurus,
Wow.
May 4th. That's right.
Wow.
Yeah.
Incredible. There's something about that date around me. Now, my
Interesting.
daughter's born that
Uh-huh.
date. My uncle's born that date, May 4th, and my cousin. So you're
What?
now
That's a
like
lot of May 4th
yes. So
people.
yes.
Yeah.
And
Well,
around me, like I don't know that many people that have my birthday.
yeah,
So
interesting, right? Yeah.
yeah, I'm not a
I'm curious
numerologist.
I'm curious what your May 4th baby is like. What's her personality?
Big, giant heart, huge
Oh,
heart, loving, kind, giving. But because she has such a big heart, she gets hurt easily. So I've
oh,
been working with her and her mindset. I'm like, you have a big brain. You've been gifted with a smart brain that can help you with your emotions and your heart for when, because she'll be like, I tried to be kind at school and I wanted to share something and people didn't want my help. And I'm like, well, sometimes you don't want help, and that will upset
yeah.
her because in her mind, I'm trying to be helpful. I'm trying to be
Yes, no, I don't want
kind.
my help.
And
Absolutely.
yes, so
Oh, so many
she's,
beautiful life lessons.
oh, yeah, yeah. And my youngest is totally different. It's incredible the minds that we're all individual and how we think and
Yeah.
our spirit inside because my youngest is 6, but if there's a bug or something like that, the two sisters have made a deal where the youngest is the protector and she will go get the bug and get rid of the bugs. But the oldest, Hazel, will, if there's a coyote or foxes or whatever, I'll protect you from animals, wild animals. You protect me from bugs.
I love these childhood deals. That's wonderful.
Yeah, it's great, and it's just seeing how the mind grows and they change, and they're working together. It's a beautiful thing, and I love being a dad. It's the best
Oh,
job in the world. It's the hardest job, but it's
yeah, I'm
absolutely
sure.
the best.
Absolutely. Well, I can
So
tell you take it with heart and seriously. Like this, like that's a serious role, right?
yes, oh, absolutely. So let's go back a little bit where we gone off track, but I could talk about farms and animals and stuff and
Well,
kids all the
another
time.
time. Yeah.
Yeah. I want to, if you went back in time, okay, say your college self, what
Hmm.
would you share for knowledge with your college self that you've now grown and learned and you're like, boy, I wish I could, have known that earlier? What would you share? What message would you send?
Oh my gosh. So that's going a little kind of far back. But
Hey, I'm a 70s child too, so
um oh my I think of myself in college and it was still the time where I was like, how do I please everyone else? Right? Who can I
mm,
be? That's like everyone else. So I would say be yourself, right? You are enough and believe in yourself. Have self-confidence. And I have a 12-year-old son, and that is the one thing that I'm always very um there's a lot of things you have to teach your kids, but for me it's like if I can instill self-confidence in this kid, he can do anything. And that's something I did not grow up with. So I would go back to my college self. And what I do every day with my son is like, how do I make him more confident, self-confident today?
No, that's fantastic. Those are powerful, powerful words because I think, we all achieve that at different ages. And I think some people actually, sad to say, never achieve self-confidence. They've
Hmm.
always and
Yeah.
will always struggle with that. So if you're out there and you're struggling with it, you're not alone and you can do it. Realize that you have the power and you are special and you have your talents and skills and everybody's different. Find yours. What are you curious in? And
Hmm.
I think you nailed that right there with just taking ownership. So how can taking ownership drastically change someone's life? Like, how does it affect their day to day?
Well, I think internally, it just makes you feel more empowered, right? If you take ownership over something, you take ownership away from everything else around you. Um, and what else can you control but yourself, right? There's not much we can control except ourselves. And most of us aren't even very good at that. Me included. So I think taking ownership really allows you to make decisions and act on it without thinking about like this what we just talked about, what other people are thinking about you. And that can make a huge difference in your outcome, right? This idea of this is a coaching model. Like, it's like your thoughts create your actions, and your actions create your results. So if you think you own something, you can take action like you own it, and then the results are yours.
Yep, I love that. It all starts in the head and those actions. And actions create habits and habits create results. So, that's fantastic. And please,
Yeah.
anybody listening, pause, go in the description, and please check out, you know, what if pigs could fly? And there's all kinds of links. If you want any coaching or you need any assistance and you want to get with Vaughn Lai, you can absolutely reach out to her. She's amazing.
Yes.
And please do, because she could change your business. She could change your mindset. She could change your life. So also, I would like to ask you to like, follow, and subscribe to the Asset Mindset Podcast. And if you're getting something from this episode, please share it with someone else that you think could also get something from that. So, to come to the end, what is the one thing that you would like to share or that you could put out there in the world? And you had a magic wand and be like, I want to help everybody, in their mindset and the way they think. I think we might have already just touched on it a little
Yeah.
bit for an answer, but what would that thing that you would love to be able to gift everybody in their mind for their mindset?
Oh, we have covered a lot of it, Ray. Um, so I'm gonna go back to a book I read a while back called it was called The Prosperous Coach, and I used it. I read it when I very first started my business, and even though I don't do one-on-one coaching, I do more group facilitations. It's still a book that really helps people who are entrepreneurs who are trying to do something different. And it's just this idea. It's almost like that what we talked about before. This idea of like, what can you say to yourself? Is start and keep going, right? Whatever you're trying to accomplish, start and keep going. And if you need to pivot, pivot, but just don't stop.
I love it. Keep moving, take action. Don't lose momentum. Once you
Yeah.
start rolling, think of it as a freight train. You get that train rolling. It takes a lot to get it going, but it takes a lot to stop it. So if you're
Yeah.
moving forward, yeah, sometimes you might have to move sideways and around, but
Mhm.
just keep moving because that's what it's all about, and that's growth. And don't beat yourself up if you make mistakes. That's a first attempt in learning. And once
Yeah.
again, thank you for being on the podcast. It's been absolutely amazing. I love your laugh. I love your smile. I love all the positive energy that you bring to the show and to the people you work with. You're doing amazing things in the world, and you do have the asset mindset. And you don't have to
Oh,
be special forces to have the asset mindset because the
right. Thank
truth is
you.
the truth. And you're an amazing, positive person. So thanks
Thank you for
again.
having me.
And all the listeners, once again, please like, follow, and subscribe The Asset Mindset. You can find us on theassetmindset.com. You can find us at YouTube, Spotify, and all the other places you'd love to get your podcasts. Have a wonderful day. God bless, and own your power.